Demonstrations continue this Monday in Chile's capital, Santiago, to show support for the Mapuche community. US President Donald Trump is encouraging US companies to make a bid for the popular Chinese app TikTok after he threatened to ban it from the United States. United Nations officials warned on Monday of a possible humanitarian disaster in Libya given the coronavirus pandemic and the possibility of military operations. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Chile, where demonstrations continue this Monday in the capital, Santiago, to show support for the Mapuche community. Chileans gathered on several of the main avenues of the city. The protest was sparked by the arrest of 48 Mapuches, including 12 children, during violent evictions that took place in the municipalities of Victoria, Traiguén and Curacautín on Sunday. Protesters have rejected the Chilean government's position regarding the demands of the Mapuche community, while blaming President Sebastián Piñera for the violent acts committed in recent days.
The reason, above all, is linked to the hunger strike that Mapuche political prisoners are undertaking, and in addition to what happened last Saturday in Curacautín. There is real sadness, bitterness and anger over what happened there. The government and the state must assume responsibility for what is going on. They are turning us against each other, Mapuche against Mapuche. The state has to respond to the demands of the Mapuche people.
The National Board of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela held a video conference headed by President Nicolas Maduro this Monday. The event sought to explain measures in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic and evaluate the efforts of grassroots party leaders. According to President Maduro, the PSUV has had to transform its functional mechanisms into a powerful social movement in order to address the needs and challenges facing the population in the face of the pandemic. Meanwhile, regarding international and regional issues, President Maduro mentioned the importance of the Sao Paulo Forum virtual meeting held a week ago to identify and organize new goals for the region. And Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, speaking during a video conference with his cabinet, assured that the National Assembly will be recovered from the right wing in the December 6 parliamentary elections with the support of the Venezuelan people.
We are going to recover the National Assembly with the people. It is the people who have the task. I hand this responsibility to the people. It's the Venezuelan people who have the task of recovering the National Assembly and putting it at the service of the people themselves, of peace, of national unity, sovereignty, national stability, welfare, happiness, economic recovery.
Brazil's Vice President Hamilton Mourão stated during an event with foreign correspondents that relations between his country and the United States will remain unchanged regardless of who wins the US presidential election.
Regardless of whether President Trump is elected or if Joe Biden is the new president of the US, the relationship between Brazil and the US will remain the same. The American hegemony is threatened in some respects by China's rising power. This is reflected in this discussion around 5G, where we know that this company you have mentioned, Huawei, has a capacity above some competitors.
And Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's chief of staff has tested positive for COVID-19 as the total number of coronavirus cases confirmed in the country surpassed 2.7 million this Monday. Army General Walter Sousa Braga Neto is the 7th Brazilian minister to have contracted the virus, but is reported to be asymptomatic. According to a statement, the official will remain in isolation until a further examination and medical evaluation is carried out, but will continue to work remotely. Brazil's health crisis shows no signs of slowing, as the nation continues to be the second hardest hit in the world after the United States. The official COVID-19 death toll has now surpassed 94,000, according to Health Ministry data. In Bolivia, mobilizations began following a call by the Bolivian Workers' Center, the chief trade union federation of the country, to demand that the date set by law for the general elections on September 6 be respected. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, brings us the details.
Roadblocks began in some regions in the early hours of Monday morning in support of the demand that September 6 be maintained as the date for the national elections.
For 3 days we're going to mobilize. This is indefinite. For 3 days we will be here. Not on the car is going to pass. Neither our cars are soybeans going to leave. On the 4th day we are going to give permissions for soybeans.
On the highway from Oruro to Potosí, the police dispersed the roadblock with chemical agents. In other cities, there were street demonstrations in Cochabamba. The city's 9th district warned of joining the protests. The Electoral Court is ordered to hold the national elections on September 6, 2020, as determined by Law 1304. In this way, District Number 9 categorically rejects any act of postponement and demands the holding of national elections on September 6, 2020.
No podemos calcular. Ya sigue más de 4 kilómetros esta gran marcha nacional.
The largest demonstrations took place in the coca-growing region of El Chapare, in the department of Cochabamba, where roadblocks were also set up on the highway between that department and Santa Cruz. In order not to face greater problems, the electoral body and this de facto government that only came in to hold elections must provide certainty to the Bolivian people, tell the Bolivian people the truth, whether there will be elections or not in our plurinational state of Bolivia. In El Alto City, the 8th district joined in blocking the streets and avenues, and a group of people railed in front of the Electoral Tribunal to demand what has come to be called respect for democracy. This is the demand for the elections to be held on September 6 instead of October 18, which is the 4th date set by the Electoral Court, under pressure from right-wing sectors that cannot overcome their lack of support, according to polls of voting intention. The movement towards socialism remains the favorite.
Freddy Morales, Telesur, Bolivia.
Mexican Navy officials seized 2.2 tons of cocaine after chasing down a boat of drug traffickers off the coast of Acapulco. The boat's 4-member crew threw 112 sacks of cocaine overboard before landing their vessel on a beach 59 kilometers from Acapulco and escaping on foot, according to a Navy statement. Authorities retrieved the sacks and confiscated the boat, as well as 500 litres of gasoline that was on board. Mexico is conducting maritime, aerial and land surveillance operations to tackle this criminal activity along its coasts. Cocaine is commonly shipped northward through the area from South American production centres to the US market. I will be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. US President Donald Trump has given Microsoft the go-ahead to try and buy the popular Chinese app TikTok after he had threatened to ban it from the United States entirely. Trump announced that he suggested to Microsoft's chief executive that he attempt to buy the app, as he wouldn't mind if Microsoft or any other very American company bought it. Used by as many as 1 billion people worldwide to produce 60-second videos on their cell phones, TikTok has become the latest focus of the ongoing political and trade battles between Washington and Beijing. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently announced that measures would be taken against Chinese apps like TikTok due to supposed national security concerns.
It's probably easier to buy the whole thing than to buy 30% of it, because they say, how do you do 30%? Who's going to get the name? The name is hot. The brand is hot. And who's going to get the name? How do you do that if it's owned by 2 different companies? So my personal opinion was you're probably better off buying the whole thing rather than buying 30% of it. I think buying 30% is complicated. And I suggested that he can go ahead, he can try. And today I'm signing an executive order to ensure that the federal government lives by a very simple rule: hire American. We've been doing it at a level that hasn't been done maybe ever.
US President Donald Trump lashed out at White House coronavirus response coordinator Deborah Birx after she sounded a grim warning about the pandemic's new surge. Trump referred to the remarks as pathetic. Angered by what he sees as overly pessimistic media coverage of his handling of the pandemic, Trump said Birx had given into pressure to sound negative. During the briefing at the White House, Trump also stressed that a permanent lockdown was not a viable path forward to tackle the coronavirus and called for Americans who have had COVID-19 to donate their plasma. The president also referred to the hurricane Isaias due to hit the U.S. coast soon and the upcoming November elections.
Storm surge and inland flooding are possible, and everyone needs to remain vigilant until it passes. I encourage everyone to follow the guidelines of the state and local authorities. We're working with them, and I think the guidelines have been very accurate so far, so stay safe. It's important for all Americans to recognize that a permanent lockdown is not a viable path toward producing the result that you want, or certainly not a viable path forward, and would ultimately inflict more harm than it would prevent. Absentee is great. It works. Like in Florida, they'll do absentee. It really works. But universal mail-in ballots is going to be a great embarrassment to our country.
Is there an executive order on this?
Well, I have the right to do it. We haven't gotten there yet, but we'll see what happens.
The United States' leading expert on infectious diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has said schools can be reopened as long as the risk presented by the novel coronavirus is very low. Speaking in an afternoon press briefing on Monday, where he appeared via video link with the governor of the state of Connecticut, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases said the default approach should be to open schools for in-person classes for the sake of children's social and mental health, as well as access to nutrition, but stressed that safety came first. Connecticut has a comparatively low number of coronavirus cases as compared to other U.S. states.
My approach is always, and I'll say it whether I'm in Connecticut or in any other place, is that the default position should be to try as best as you possibly can to open up the schools for in-person learning for the following reason. It's important for the children because of the psychological benefit, and in some places, even for the nutrition of children who rely on the breakfast and the lunches in school for proper nutrition. Number two, there are important negative downstream effects that are unintended but can occur of a ripple effect on the parents who have to dramatically modify their own work schedule when you keep children at home. Having said that, there's a big however there. And the however is the primary consideration should always be the safety, the health, and the welfare of the children, as well as the teachers, and the secondary effects for spreading with regard to the parents and other family members. If the infection rate is so low that there's very little chance of there being infection spread, then you should feel okay about doing it, but making sure that you do the things that are necessary to prevent spread.
Spain's former king, Juan Carlos, who is facing investigation at home and abroad for corruption, has announced that he will go into exile. The royal palace said in a statement that the 82-year-old revealed he would leave the country in a letter to his son, current King Felipe VI, in order to make it easier for him to rule. King Felipe accepted the decision and thanked him. After a series of media revelations, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez spoke out in July, saying that the entire Spanish population was receiving disturbing information. The former king's lawyer, Javier Sanchez Junco, issued a statement this Monday saying that his client was not trying to escape justice by going into exile and would remain available to prosecutors. Locust swarms have invaded Russia's southern regions, causing huge damage to local agriculture, according to regional authorities. A state of emergency has been declared in 7 parts of the Republic of Kalmykia, according to the emergency ministry. The damage is estimated at over $13 million. In the Volgograd region, the locust invasion was caused by severe drought. For many villagers, agriculture is the main source of livelihood, and the risk of being left without provisions for the winter is very real. However, local officials have assured they have the necessary equipment to control the infestation. French authorities have implemented rules on outdoor mask wearing in those parts of the country hardest hit by COVID-19. Beach resorts along France's Atlantic coast are among the areas where the new rules apply. The move comes after a nationwide decree last month required people to wear masks in all indoor public places. However, pressure on the government is growing to make outdoor mask use compulsory on a national level. France is seeing an increase in virus infections, with hundreds of new clusters reported in recent weeks as people begin to get together to socialise and for summer holidays. France has reported 7,000 new cases in the past week after a strict 2-month nationwide lockdown largely brought the virus under control. Now we have more stories coming up after this final break, so stay with us. United Nations officials warned on Monday of a possible humanitarian disaster in Libya, given the coronavirus pandemic and the possibility of military operations in the city of Sirte.
The UN remains concerned about a possible humanitarian disaster in Libya should the current escalation and mobilization around Sirte lead to military operations. The lives of more than 125,000 people in and around Sirte are at great risk. COVID-19 cases continue to increase across Libya, with 3,837 cases reported and 83 deaths to date, most of them in the western and southern parts of the country. Capacity for testing, tracing, and treating people remains extremely low across the country and continues to be concentrated in Tripoli and Benghazi.
According to Palestinian agencies, Israeli fighter jets bombed Hamas facilities in the center and south of the besieged Gaza Strip early Monday morning. Local media added that the occupying Israeli regime fired 3 missiles at a building of the resistance forces in the west of Rafah city. The Israeli army claimed that the bombing of Gaza was in response to rocket attacks made by resistance groups. Hamas spokesperson Varsi Barham denounced that the Israeli attacks are aimed at diverting attention from the deteriorating political and economic situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and mark an escalation of the violence. Syrian authorities described an agreement reached between Kurdish militias and an oil company based in the United States as illegal and invalid, noting that the move aims at stealing Syria's oil resources. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs pointed out that the agreements constitute an attack on Syria's sovereignty and a continuation of the hostile policy of the United States. Meanwhile, Turkish authorities have also condemned the deal, which was signed between the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces and the Delta Crescent Energy Corporation. United States Senator Lindsey Graham announced late in June that the deal sought to modernize oil fields in northeast Syria.
We have another option to them to tell us that.
And Syrian army units found a weapons and equipment cache belonging to the Islamic State terrorist group near the town of Al-Mayadin in the eastern province of Deir ez-Zor. According to military sources, numerous ammunition of several types were found, as well as communications devices, in an area that is located further north from where ISIS members usually operate in the Fars Badia desert. In the past 72 hours, similar stashes of weapons, ammunition and means of transport have been seized by the Syrian army in liberated areas of Idlib and Hama provinces. Kenya is one of several African nations that are resuming international flights suspended since March because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The country's flag carrier Kenya Airways has resumed flights to 30 different destinations. Other African countries that have resumed flights include Mali, Rwanda, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso and Togo. In Ivory Coast, a health declaration form must be completed before travelling. In the case of Togo, all travellers will be subject to a COVID-19 test on arrival and another on departure. Meanwhile, Tanzania has banned Kenya Airways from entering the country. Tanzanian authorities said the flights were being banned on a reciprocal basis after Kenyan authorities decided against including Tanzania on a list of countries whose passengers would be permitted to enter Kenya with the resumption of commercial flights. And Kenya has long grappled with high teen pregnancy rates. Last month, figures from a leaked health ministry document revealed thousands of girls had fallen pregnant during the lockdown between March and May. In Nairobi alone, almost 5,000 girls fell pregnant. Just over 500 of them are between the ages of 10 and 14.
The coronavirus has affected girls in Kenya through several ways. We have seen an increase in number of teenage pregnancies within this period of time that the girls have been home. This has resulted mostly in the girls being away from schools, which closed in March at the onset of coronavirus.
And they tell us most of them are transactional sex. They're still boyfriends, but they're still transactional at the end of the day. They want some money out of it, they want some little pocket money. And then there are some who have it because they can't really access sanitary towels. In school, sometimes they get free distributions, but when they're home and they can't afford them, they have to have this transactional sex to be able to afford them.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but we finished with a video showing how one family is keeping active and entertained while providing entertainment for others in the midst of the coronavirus lockdown. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website and social media pages. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching and enjoy the music.
Love Me Do by the Beatles.
1, 2, 3, 4.